You know what's strange? We live in a world where the most attractive girls and the richest men, people who seem to have everything, are the ones who quietly cry themselves to sleep because they can't find real love. Everyone assumes they're too picky or too busy, but the truth is far deeper, far darker, and far more human. Behind the confidence, the beauty, the success, there is a loneliness people don't talk about. And today you can understand why the people who look most desirable from the outside often struggle the most on the inside when it comes to relationships. Hot girls and rich men don't struggle with attracting people. They struggle with attracting the right people. And this is the part nobody sees. From the outside, it looks like they have endless options, endless admirers, endless opportunities for romance. But the truth is, most of what they attract is attention, not connection. People want their shine, not their story, their beauty, not their bruises, their success, not their struggles. And when you're constantly approached for what you represent instead of who you are, you start to lose trust in the world around you. You begin to feel like everyone wants something from you, but nobody actually wants you. Imagine waking up every day knowing you will be praised, followed, chased, complimented, and desired, but almost never seen. People project fantasies onto you. They assume your life is perfect. They assume you don't need love or support or reassurance because your face or your money already gives you an upper hand. But nothing could be further from the truth. The more attractive or successful you are, the more invisible your emotional needs become to others. They treat you like an experience, not a person. They approach you like a trophy to win, a prize to show off, a story to tell others. And when you feel like a prize long enough, you start to wonder if anyone will ever try to understand the human behind the highlight reel. For hot girls, the problem often begins early. They get used to being desired before they even understand what real love feels like. They attract people who want validation, not partnership, people who want to be associated with beauty, not build a life with the person behind it. They're constantly evaluated like products, to this, to that, too beautiful, too intimidating. And because the world never lets them forget how they look, many people forget to ask who they are. Their personality gets overshadowed by their appearance. Their mind gets overlooked for their features. Their heart gets ignored because everyone assumes someone else will take care of it, but no one really does. Rich men face a different version of the same problem. They meet people who want comfort, lifestyle, opportunity, security, or status, people who see them not as partners but as stepping stones. They deal with manipulation disguised as affection, admiration that's actually ambition, and loyalty that lasts only as long as the benefits do. A rich man can take someone to the nicest places, provide the finest places, and offer a life many dream of, but none of that guarantees that the person standing next to him loves him for who he is. And the moment he senses that someone is more attracted to his lifestyle than his soul, he pulls back, becomes guarded, and starts isolating himself emotionally. Both hot girls and rich men experience a loneliness that looks glamorous from the outside, but feels suffocating from the inside. They become skeptical, they question motives, they test intentions, they analyze behavior. Because when you've been chosen for the wrong reasons enough times, you stop believing anyone could choose you for the right ones. Attention becomes exhausting, not flattering. Compliments feel hollow, not uplifting. And the more people desire you for superficial reasons, the more deeply you crave someone who sees beyond them. The world loves to judge them. Why are they still single? They must be too demanding. They think too highly of themselves, but nobody realizes that their standards come from experience, not arrogance. They've lived through relationships where they felt used, misunderstood, or unappreciated. They've watched people love the benefits but ignore the person. They've been in rooms full of admirers and still felt completely alone. And when you've tasted that kind of emptiness, you don't fall for fake love anymore. You wait, you protect your heart, you choose slowly, carefully, intentionally. Most people choose connection. Hot girls and rich men chase authenticity. And authenticity is rare in a world obsessed with appearances and advantages. They stay single not because they can't find love, but because they refuse to settle for a love that isn't real. Hot girls and rich men intimidate others without even trying. And this becomes one of the biggest reasons they stay single longer than people expect. Most people assume intimidation is something they intentionally project, like they walk into a room planning to scare people off or act superior. But that's not the truth. Their presence alone triggers insecurities in others. Their confidence, their discipline, their appearance, their success. These things make ordinary people question their own worth. And when someone feels lesser in front of you, they don't approach you with authenticity. They approach with fear, hesitation, or pretense. They either overcompensate or they quietly back away before a connection even begins, because they don't feel good enough. Intimidation isn't about being unkind. It's about being uncommon. When a girl walks into a room with beauty, self-respect, and standards, people assume she must already be taken or that she wouldn't even look at them. They don't realize that beneath her confidence, she might be hoping someone would genuinely try. But the world has conditioned many men to believe beautiful women only date a certain type of man, so they don't even attempt to start a conversation. They admire her from afar, create imaginary barriers in their heads, and convince themselves she's out of reach without ever giving her the chance to decide for herself. She loses countless opportunities for connection simply because people eliminate themselves before she ever could. Rich men face a similar but slightly different problem. Their success becomes a wall, not a door. People assume a wealthy man wants someone equally powerful, equally famous, equally impressive. They don't realize that sometimes the richest men crave simplicity, peace, and honesty more than anything. But society has built a narrative around them that they are heartless, busy, or uninterested in emotional connection. They look unapproachable because everyone assumes they have too many options or too little time. Even when someone does gather the courage to talk to them, it often comes with a rehearsed personality, a mask, an act. And the moment a man senses that the person in front of him is performing rather than being real, he withdraws. Intimidation doesn't push people away, it pushes the truth away. What most people don't understand is that intimidation comes from the gap between who they are and who others think they are. The gap becomes so big that real connections rarely cross it. Hot girls are judged before they are known. People assume they are arrogant, high maintenance, uninterested, or emotionally unavailable. Rich men are judged as controlling, superior, emotionally cold, or excessively selective. None of this is necessarily true, but perception becomes the prison they are forced to live in. They get blamed for being intimidating when it's really other people feeling insecure. They get accused of having an attitude when all they have is self-respect. Because of this, most people approach them not with honesty, but instead of saying, I like you and I want to know you, they try too hard to impress. They overact, exaggerate their achievements, pretend to be more confident than they are, or hide their flaws. But the beauty of intimidating people is that they can sense fake energy instantly. They don't fall for words, they fall for energy, consistency, vulnerability, sincerity. And because fake is everywhere, they stay alone longer, waiting for someone whose soul doesn't shake when meeting them. Even in friendships, this intimidation affects everything. People hesitate to invite them, speak freely, or show their weaknesses. They assume hot girls judge them. They assume rich men expect perfection. And this constant fear of judgment creates emotional distance. They become surrounded by people who admire them but do not know them. People who want to be close to them but don't have the courage to be real around them. And slowly the admiration turns into isolation. Everyone looks, few approach, even fewer stay, and almost nobody is truly themselves. This intimidation also makes relationships complicated. Many partners start with admiration but quickly shift into insecurity. A beautiful girl may choose a man sincerely, but the moment he sees how much attention she gets, he becomes doubtful, jealous, controlling. A rich man may choose a woman he truly loves, but her insecurity might turn into dependence or self-comparison. Their attractiveness or success becomes a curse because it triggers emotional instability in others who haven't healed their own wounds. And so, without doing anything wrong, without hurting anyone, without pushing anyone away, they still end up alone. Not because they are intimidating, but because too many people are intimidated by the idea of them rather than the reality of them. Hot girls and rich men are often accused of having impossibly high standards. But what people don't understand is that most of those standards were not born from ego. They were born from pain. They didn't wake up one day and decide to demand more. Life forced them to. Experiences shaped them. Betrayals hardened them. Disappointments sharpen their intuition. When you've been loved for the wrong reasons, lied to with a smile, or used by people who pretended to care, you don't lower your standards to make others comfortable. You raise them to protect your peace. And the world mistakes that protection for pride when in reality it's a survival mechanism. Hot girls deal with a very specific kind of betrayal early on. They attract a lot of admiration, but admiration is not affection. They get approached by people who are blinded by beauty, not connected to their character. So many of the men who enter their lives come in with fantasies, not intentions. They want the idea of her, not the depth of her. They want someone to show off, not someone to grow with. And when she finally gives someone a chance, she often discovers that the person who claimed to be different was only pretending until he got what he wanted. After a few heartbreaks like that, she learns to guard her energy. Her standards rise not because she thinks she deserves a perfect man, but because she's tired of being reduced to her appearance, tired of being misread, tired of being treated like a prize instead of a partner. Rich men face a different but equally painful pattern. The world teaches them that success attracts loyalty, but experience teaches them that success attracts opportunists. They meet people who enter their lives with sweet words and pure intentions on the surface, but underneath there's calculation. Some want access, some want lifestyle, some want convenience, some want to say they're with someone powerful. A rich man often learns the hard way that the more he gives, the less people appreciate the man behind the money. So he builds filters, he watches actions, not words. He tests character, not charm. And every filter becomes a standard he keeps for his own emotional safety. When both hot girls and rich men set boundaries after being hurt, society labels as too picky, too demanding, emotionally unavailable, or full of themselves. But nobody understands the emotional math behind their choices. They've learned that settling leads to suffering, that ignoring red flags leads to regret, that giving chances to the wrong people costs more than being alone ever will. They're not asking for perfection. They're asking for honesty, effort, loyalty, maturity, and a connection that isn't built on superficial desire. Their standards also change because they recognize patterns faster than others. They've been in enough relationships to know how manipulation sounds when disguised as love. They know how inconsistency feels when it pretends to be effort. They know how someone acts when they want temporary excitement rather than long-term commitment. They become sharper, more aware, more selective. They don't fall for butterflies anymore. They look for peace. They don't get impressed by surface level gestures. They pay attention to consistency. And because they've outgrown emotionally immature people, those immature people label them as difficult. One of the deepest wounds hot girls carry is being loved only when they're at their best. People love them when they're pretty, when they're smiling, when they're confident. But the moment they show sadness, vulnerability, or imperfections, the same people who once adored them lose interest. This teaches them to raise their standards not in partners, but in emotional safety. They need someone who loves them beyond the makeup, beyond the attention, beyond the confidence. Someone who stays when the mask comes off and the real emotions come out. Rich men, on the other hand, carry the wound of transactional love. They've met people who were loyal only when life was easy, affectionate only when benefits flowed, supportive only when the lifestyle was comfortable. The moment they set boundaries or show emotional vulnerability, those people disappear. This teaches them to raise their standards, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. They need someone who values the man, not the money, someone who chooses them even when there's nothing to gain. Ultimately, their standards come from a simple truth. They know what it feels like to give their heart to the wrong person, and they refuse to repeat that mistake again. They're not staying single because they can't find love. They're staying single because they're waiting for a love that feels real, steady, and safe. Hot girls and rich men often stay single because their lives are already full, structured, disciplined, purpose-driven. And when your life is already complete on your own, the wrong person doesn't feel like a partner. They feel like a burden. This is the part people misunderstand. They assume that being single means being lonely, but for people who have built themselves, loneliness is not the threat. Chaos is. Distraction is. Emotion instability is. When you've worked hard to create peace in your life, you let just anyone walk into it and disturb what took years to build. And this makes them extremely selective about who gets access to their time, their energy, and their emotional world. Hot girls often grow up learning how to do everything themselves. People assume beauty gives them privilege, but it also forces independence. They deal with jealousy, assumptions, competition, and used to relying constantly. They get used to relying on themselves because they've learned early that depending on others is risky. Over time, they create routines, friendships, careers, goals, and passions that keep them fulfilled. They don't sit around waiting for someone to save them. Their life already has movement, meaning, and momentum. So when a man comes in expecting her to drop everything and revolve her life around him, she steps back. She doesn't want a relationship that takes her away from her purpose. She wants one that fits into it without dimming her light. Rich men go through something similar, but in a different way. Their lives become full because success forces structure. They have responsibilities, goals, businesses, routines, investments, commitments, and people depending on them. They don't have time for emotional games, mixed signals, inconsistent behavior, or partners who drain them. A man who has built his life from nothing knows the value of time and peace. His days are planned, his vision is clear, his discipline is sharp. So when someone enters his life expecting him to entertain negativity, drama, or insecurity, he withdraws. He won't sacrifice years of discipline for someone who brings more chaos than clarity. This fullness of life means that both hot girls and rich and measure people not by how exciting they seem, but by how peaceful they feel. They're not impressed by superficial things. They don't chase temporary chemistry. They look for alignment, values, mindset, energy, lifestyle. And because alignment is rare, they stay alone longer. Their life is already functioning beautifully without a partner. So bringing someone in must add value, not subtract it. They're not looking for someone to complete them. They're looking for someone who doesn't complicate what they've completed. Most people enter relationships because they're afraid of being alone, but hot girls and rich men enter relationships only when they find someone who actually makes life better, calmer, softer, more meaningful. They don't depend on love to save them. They depend on themselves. And that self-sufficiency becomes intimidating to partners who expect traditional roles or emotional dependence. Some men want a girl who needs them, not a girl who chooses them out of strength. Some women want a rich man to take care of them, not to stand beside him with independence. When they meet someone who is not emotionally equal, the imbalance becomes obvious immediately. People who enter their lives sometimes feel threatened by their fulfillment. A man might feel useless if a woman doesn't rely on him emotionally or financially. A woman might feel insecure if a man doesn't need her for validation or comfort. Instead of appreciating their self-sufficiency, some partners they take it personally. They start creating problems where none exist. They try to match insecurity with control. But hot girls and rich men have zero tolerance for emotional instability. They've been through too much to entertain relationships that drain their energy. That's why their circle is small, their trust is guarded, and their patience is limited. They would rather wait years for the right person than settle for someone who turns their peaceful life into an emotional battlefield. They know the wrong partner can destroy mental health, derail goals, waste years, and break identity. They've seen people lose themselves in the wrong relationship and they refuse to become one of them. Their lives are full not because they don't want love, but because they built a life worth protecting. And if someone cannot match their energy, their discipline, their maturity, or their intentions, they will never let that person close. They're not avoiding love. They're avoiding the wrong love, the heavy love, the confusing love, the unstable love. They know that the right person will feel like alignment, not disruption, like clarity, not confusion, like growth, not sacrifice. Hot girls and rich men often stay single because deep down, they are afraid of losing themselves in love. They've worked too hard, healed too much, climbed too far, and rebuilt too many broken pieces of themselves to let the wrong person come in and pull them back into the darkness they escaped from. People see their confidence, their stability, their success, but they don't see the journey it took for them to get here. They don't see the nights when they questioned their worth, the betrayals that almost destroyed them, or the emotional battles they fought alone. And when someone has rebuilt themselves from nothing, the thought of losing all of that for love becomes terrifying. Hot girls are often misunderstood. People think they're emotionally closed off or uninterested in relationships. But the truth is they've seen how easily love can erase identity. Many of them have been in relationships where they were expected to shrink themselves to make a partner feel bigger. They've been told to be less confident, less ambitious, less expressive, less independent, just to keep someone comfortable. They've lost pieces of themselves before, and it took years to get those pieces back. So now when someone approaches them with love, they don't fear rejection. They fear disappearing into someone else's world again. They fear becoming a version of themselves that is smaller, quieter, weaker than the woman they fought to become. Rich men face their own version of this fear. Success comes with sacrifice. They spend years building discipline, financial stability, mental strength, vision, and purpose. They work through failures, loneliness, judgment, and pressure. They create a strong identity built on effort and resilience. So when someone tries to enter their life, they become cautious. They know how easy it is to be consumed by a relationship that demands too much and gives too little. They've watched other men lose direction, lose ambition, lose money, lose purpose, all because they fell into the wrong relationship. A man who has built something valuable becomes terrified of someone who could destroy it emotionally, mentally, or financially. This is why he chooses slowly, tests quietly, and observes deeply. He's not afraid of commitment. He's afraid of committing to the wrong person. Both hot girls and rich men fear losing themselves because they understand that love can be a beautiful thing, but only when it's with the right person. With the wrong person, love becomes an emotional prison. It becomes a place where identity fades, dreams die, confidence drops, and inner peace collapses. They've experienced relationships where they gave too much and received too little. They've watched their energy get drained, their boundaries get crossed, and their self-worth get questioned. So now their biggest fear is not being single, it's losing the self they worked so hard to create. Another reason they protect themselves is because they know they attract people who want to take, not give. A hot girl might attract men who want validation, not partnership. A rich man might attract women who want comfort, not connection. This dynamic creates relationships where they are expected to pour endlessly while the other person contributes nothing but neediness and emotional chaos. They've lived through unbalanced relationships where their love became a responsibility instead of a choice. And once you've been drained like that, you learn to protect your energy like your life depends on it. This fear of losing themselves also makes them hyper aware of red flags. They are quick to sense manipulation, emotional dependence, jealousy, control, insecurity, and lack of ambition. They can feel when someone is trying to shape them into a version that fits their comfort zone. They walk away faster than most people because their self-respect is stronger than their desire to be loved. They don't cling to potential or ignore warning signs just to avoid being alone. Their fear pushes them toward emotional maturity, not emotional desperation. Most people enter relationships without knowing who they are. Hot girls and rich men enter relationships only after becoming who they are. And when you have a strong identity, you don't want a relationship that threatens it. You want a relationship that enhances it. But finding someone who supports growth instead of fearing it, who respects boundaries instead of breaking them, who loves without consuming, that kind of connection is rare. That is why they remain single longer, not because they don't want love, because they refuse to lose themselves in the process of finding it.